Scottsdale, Arizona. McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park opened in 1975 to the public. The 30-acre park sits on land that was donated to the city in 1967 by the Flower McCormick family. The jewel of the park is the 15-inch scale standard Paradise and Pacific Railroad. The train runs year-round with rides. Also, McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park is located on Indian Bend Road in Scottsdale, Arizona. The park is open every day, year-round, open till around 6 in the evening. And during the Holiday Lights event, they're open all evening, and you can ride the train and see the lights. It's just beautiful when riding the train at night. And they have lights up, and the decorations are taken down and put away and put in storage when the event is over. Also, when this place was around, the 15-inch gauge tracks layout was a lot different than it was before. Also, the live steamers trains you can also ride, and they're only on weekends, and they're on the other at one end of the park. You can also explore the model trains and a museum as well. What you see right behind me is Missouri Pacific 13150. Missouri Pacific 13150 was built originally for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. Missouri Pacific 13150 is steel cupola off-center caboose, tower caboose, and was used on freight trains and on the Missouri Pacific Railroad. Also, it was then renumbered and renamed Atchison Pacific 2587. Also, the wheels and axles of this caboose were either destroyed or are used somewhere as an example artifact. Also, this caboose at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park has been repainted, renumbered as Paradise and Pacific 100,000, 11, 36, 63. Says 163. Also, this caboose is even standing here as an entry ornament. Also, this caboose has been standing here since, I believe, since 2010. What you see right behind me is Missouri Pacific 13028. Missouri Pacific 13028 was built in 1951, and also Missouri Pacific 13028 is a steel cupola center tower caboose and was used on freight trains, and also the wheels and axles of this caboose were either destroyed or are used somewhere as an example artifact. Also, this caboose was formerly numbered Great Northern 283, and also wheels and axles. It was renumbered and renamed Missouri Pacific 13028, and then renumbered Missouri Pacific 12283. And also this caboose you can find angle parked at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and has been repainted and renumbered as Paradise and Pacific 42065. And the number on the cupola caboose says 065. Also, this caboose is even standing here as an entry ornament. Also, this caboose has been standing here, I believe, since 2010. What you see right behind me is Magma Arizona 6. Magma Arizona 6 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1907 and is the third 318-89 steam locomotive built in that factory, and is a 260 mogul type steam locomotive. Magma Arizona 6 weighs 151,500 pounds and 134,000 pounds on its 59 drivers, and is an oil burner with 21 by 26 inch cylinders. It operated with at its boiler pressure of 200 psi, delivering 33,607 pounds tractive effort. Magma Arizona 6 hauled copper ore from Superior to Magma, Arizona for 38 years. Magma Arizona 6 has hauled copper ore has served the mining railroads of Arizona for 54 years. Magma Arizona 6 then retired in January 1960 when Magma Arizona 6 came out of the factory. It was Arizona and New Mexico Railway 26. Then leased to the El Paso and Southwestern Railroad, and it was number 130. Then in 1922, it was then renumbered as Magma Arizona 6, which it is now. Originally, Magma Arizona 6 was a narrow gauge locomotive, then converted to standard gauge in 1915. In 1960, Magma Arizona 6 retired from service and was then sold to Scottsdale Railway Mechanical Society in 1977. Also, Magma Arizona 6 then came to live here at the McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and is put on display. Also, Magma Arizona 6 is the only surviving Magma Arizona 260 today and is seen here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park for static display. What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 197-148. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 197-148 was built in 1914. It was originally a sleeping car, then converted to being a baggage car, and was used on heavyweight passenger trains in the past. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 197-148 was also used for carrying baggage during World War II. Then Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 197-148 was retired and came to live at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. And also, it is on static display and is part of the museum area park. And also, Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 197-148 has exhibits inside for viewing as part of the museum area of the park. What you see right behind me is the Pullman Roald Amundsen coach. The Pullman Roald Amundsen coach was built by the Pullman Car Company in 1928. This coach was donated to Scottsdale Railroad and Mechanical Society by Mr. and Mrs. Franz Sally. It is one of 6 cars built by Pullman Car Company in 1928. The Pullman Roald Amundsen coach carried presidents of the United States on board, which were Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and Dwight Eisenhower. President Eisenhower used the car exclusively during the Whistle Stop campaign in 1952. On August 18, 1940, the President Roosevelt and Canadian Prime Minister W.L. Mackenzie King met mutually agreed to Ogdensburg Declaration, a declaration that provided the joint defense of North America in the event of the foreign invasion. That was the beginning of the North American and air defense. It was donated to the park in 1971 and is on display and part of the museum area of McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park here in Scottsdale, Arizona. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific 10. Paradise and Pacific 10 was built by Bill Daney in Pueblo, Colorado in 1980 and is a 460 10-wheeler type steam locomotive, and its track gauge is 15-inch scale. Also runs on Paradise and Pacific Railroad at McCormick-Stillman and burns propane as fuel. Also, Paradise and Pacific 10 came to be at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and to be one of the star attractions at the park and is one of the steam engines that operate here on the weekends. And when the holiday lights are on, Paradise and Pacific 10 is like one of the crown jewels of the park and railroad. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific 11. Paradise and Pacific 11 was built by Bill Daney in Pueblo, Colorado in 1956 and is a 282 Mikado type steam locomotive, and its track gauge is 15-inch scale. Also, it runs on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and burns propane as fuel. Also, Paradise and Pacific 11 came to be part of McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and be one of the star attractions at the park, and is one of the steam engines that operate here on the weekends and when the holiday lights are on. Also, Paradise and Pacific 11 is like one of the crown jewels of the park, and also it had a green boiler jacketing. It has a green boiler jacketing currently, and it once had a black one. What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 1205. Denver and Rio Grande 1205 is a replica gondola and is used here on the McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park's Paradise and Pacific Railroad here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And also, 1205 runs on the 15-inch gauge track here at McCormick-Stillman, and also it's one of the several gondola cars here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the Paradise and Pacific. What you see right behind me is Carson Colorado 301. Carson Colorado 301 is a 15-inch gauge gondola car here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. Also, Carson Colorado 301 is one of the several gondola cars used here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the Paradise and Pacific. It's a resemblance replica of any gondola car, and I just like how well it's detailed like the other ones are here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 52. Paradise and Pacific number 52 is one of the riding gondola cars, one of the several gondola cars here used on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the 15-inch gauge trackway. Also, Paradise and Pacific 52 is built by the McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, and I just like how detailed. It's one of the red cars here at McCormick-Stillman. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 53. Paradise and Pacific number 53, I believe, was built by the Paradise and Pacific McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park here in Scottsdale, Arizona. It is one of the several gondola cars here at the park that runs on the 15-inch gauge track here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. And also, it's one of the red cars here at the park, and the tints are very different than the others. What you see right behind me is Rio Grande Southern number 125. This gondola car is the brown gondola car, and I believe it's not the only brown gondola car here, but it's like a replica gondola car here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. And my belief is that it was built by the park, and the Paradise and Pacific Railroad is customly made. Also, it's one of the several riding gondola cars here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 5607. Denver and Rio Grande 5607 is a replica of one of the Denver and Rio Grande cattle cars. And also, this cattle car is one of the 3 cattle cars, stock cars, or cattle cars, whatever you desire to call them, here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad. Also, this cattle car has been the right space for kids to ride in. And also it's the right size for kids, not people my size, of course. Also, it's the black one here, and the other two are not this color. And also, it's just like one of the cattle cars used behind the train sets at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 20. Paradise and Pacific number 20 is a bobber caboose and is a replica of one. And also, it is even one of two cabooses on the 15-inch track gauge at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad. Also, number 20 has been behind train sets at McCormick-Stillman and is also used it even sometimes during normal operations or just the holiday lights and everything. And also the cupola is in the center of the caboose, and also it's painted red, and I just like how they have this as part of the train set. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 55. Paradise and Pacific number 55 is one of the several gondolas here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park used on the 15-inch gauge trackway. Also, it's the yellow gondola, and unlike to the wooden gondolas, it's one of two of its type here, but you see it has doors and it has side benches instead of benches across from the pit of the other gondolas. And it's not the only one here. There's also another one like it. It's the only yellow gondola here, and it's got blue benches and it's well detailed. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 43. Paradise and Pacific number 43 is a red gondola car used on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad. Also, it's one of the red gondola cars and one of the several gondola cars here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. And I believe it was built by the park and the Paradise and Pacific. Also, it is even used on train to give visitors rides around the park. What you see right behind me is Nevada, California, and Oregon 221. Nevada, California, and Oregon 221 is one of the gondola cars here at the Paradise and Pacific Railroad in Scottsdale, Arizona at McCormick-Stillman. And also it's one of the brown cars here. And it's even used for hauling visitors around the park on the 15-inch gauge track. It's one of the several gondolas here at the park. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 51. Paradise and Pacific number 51 is one of the riding cars, gondola cars, one of the several riding gondola cars here at the park. Also, number 51 is one of the red cars here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad on the 15-inch gauge track. Also, 51 is even used for hauling people, visitors around the park on the Paradise and Pacific 15-inch gauge track. Also, it's even used around the park on train sets on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad as well. What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific number 1550. Southern Pacific 1550 is one of the gondola cars and is one of the red gondola cars here at Paradise and Pacific at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, and is part of the train sets here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and used for hauling visitors around the park. And also, sometimes it is arranged by any consist of the train sets at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 1. Paradise and Pacific number 1 is a replica 15-inch gauge baggage car and is one of the pieces here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. It was even used for decorations during lights event, holiday lights event in the back of the park. Also, this baggage car was even used to give kids rides around the park. Also, I may be a little too big to fit inside, and it might be the right side for kids to ride. Also, I just like it's the only 15-inch gauge passenger car on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad, I believe. And also, I just like how well it's detailed. What you see right behind me is Union Tank Line Company number 1505. Union Tank Line Company is number 1505 is the only tanker car on the 15-inch gauge track and here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, and it's the only tanker car that can be found at the Paradise and Pacific Railroad at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park here in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's also a replica of a tanker car and also of a Union Tank Line tanker car, and also it's well detailed as a replica, and I just like how it is. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 100. Paradise and Pacific number 100 is one of the 3 stock cars, or cattle cars, whatever you desire to call them, at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, and it has been used on the train sets before here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona. Also, Paradise and Pacific 100 is one of the 2 red stock cars here at McCormick-Stillman and is even used for the right size for kids to fit inside, and also I may be too big to fit inside. And also it's even the amount of space for kids to sit inside, right size for kids and for kids to ride inside. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 207. Paradise and Pacific 207 was built by Guy Stillman and Chuck Schlosser in 1953 and is a 15-inch scale model of an SW8. Paradise and Pacific number 207 is the yellow diesel at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and operates on the 15-inch scale track at the park, and where there are times during weekdays it is scheduled to run and faces backwards when it pulls the train. What you see right behind me is the Stillman Station. The Stillman Station is a replica of the station in Clifton, Arizona, built in 1901. Also, the Stillman Station may be compared to the same as the one in Clifton, Arizona. Also, it's here and you even check out the interior side, and even on the interior side you can also buy some souvenirs or tickets to ride the 15-inch scale train, or the live steamers trains, and the carousel. And even ticket to visit the museum area and take a gander inside as well. I majestic, as if you're waiting for a train to pull into the station. If you're on the platform side. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 209. Paradise and Pacific 209 was built in 2002 by Custom Locomotive and Paradise and Pacific Railroad and is a GP38. Also, Paradise and Pacific 209 is the blue diesel at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park and operates on the 15-inch scale track at the park. And there are times during weekdays it is scheduled to run. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 60. Paradise and Pacific number 60 is one of the green gondola cars and one of the several gondola cars here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park on the 15-inch scale train trackway. And also, it's part of one of the train consists, however they're sorted. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 61. Paradise and Pacific number 61 is a resemblance basic replica of a gondola car and is one of the blue gondola cars here at the park. Also, Paradise and Pacific number 61 is one of the gondola cars that runs on the 15-inch scale trackway here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park as part of the train consist. Right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 56. Paradise and Pacific 56 is one of the gondolas on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad. And also it's unlike to the other gondolas. Instead of the seats connected to each side, it's got sideways seats and got a door for you to step right in. And there's also another car like it, except it's painted a different color. It's used as one part of the train set here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 45. Paradise and Pacific number 45 is one of the brown gondola cars here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park, and it's basically a replica of a gondola car. And also, it is used as part of the train set at McCormick Stillman on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad and is one of the riding cars in several gondolas here. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 50. Paradise and Pacific number 50 is one of the brown gondola cars here on the 15-inch scale track at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park, and also it's a great way, it's part of the train set here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park. What you see right behind me is Colorado and Southern 7035. Colorado and Southern 7035 is a replica cattle car, stock car, whatever you want to call it. Also, it is a 15-inch scale replica of a Colorado and Southern cattle car. And this cattle car is one of the two red cattle cars of McCormick Stillman Railroad Park. Also, it is even the right size for kids to ride aboard, but I may be too big to fit inside. Also, it's a good way to be part of one of the cattle cars, to be part of the train. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific number 25. Paradise and Pacific number 25 is a 15-inch scale caboose, and also it's one of the two cabooses used as part of the train sets here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park. And also, it's a good way. It's an off-center tower Aquila caboose. Okay, you're not going to believe what I'm about to show you now, so follow me. Okay, what I'm here to show you, this is the model railroad building, and also, as you can see, this building was finished sometime and was worked on in spring of 2011 and finished sometime in 2012. And as you can see behind me, this sphere shows a lot of different scale trees. like a 3D cartoon thing, like you'd expect to see on a opening theme song, so a TV show. But I like, pretty cool how they made this. They're different scales. I'm going to start by showing you the model railroads in the building, and also let's take a look around. This is the O-scale model railroad club, the Lyons trains, O-scale. This is the Paradise and Pacific Club. It's like how well they have it all detailed. Look at all the things they have running. So many. And also, see they got a lot of buildings, tunnels, and tracks laid out, and lots of trains. And also, Union Station. That's the biggest tunnel over there. They even have a fast fuel bridge as they come inside. Also, you could see right there is a Jersey and Western Railway train, and that has like a president on it. This train is called J.B. Turner, and it's number 249. See? And here's some old rail cars. Central Railroad of New Jersey. And a boxcar of Jersey Central. And here's a live steam train. And this is Seattle and Scottsdale, number 10. Maybe it's like the right size for the live steamers here. And here's an old caboose, passenger cars and such. And you could also see on this wall, here's a portrait of a model train. That's Virginian, number 2329. And here's a portrait of some Alco diesels. That's an Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe on the left. And here's a golden streamline diesel. Here, 50th cent Christmas for electric trains. Wow, 1950. Okay, you could see here, this is the N-scale club layouts. And this is the Sun and Sand model railroad club. Also, we have a lot of things detailed here. N-scale is what I'm mostly into. Also, you could see all this stuff, all these trains they run here. This is all detailed. Also, we have a very, very long. This is the model railroad club, Scottsdale club. A lot of detail here. We got mountains and such. And just like how well they have this visual. Also, wonderful how it looks. Okay, you could see above me that is a full-size steam locomotive. It's number 10, but it's not the number 10 that operates on the Paradise and Pacific Railroad, of course. Also, it seems like, I think it's made out of wood. And also, seeing as it's coming out of that wall up there. And their TV show is up there that are cartoons like Porky Pig's Railroad.
This literally has
the other screen shows model railroad on camera, model trains. And it's also played Thomas the Tank Engine, episode Tickled Pink, and some other train videos as well. What you see right behind me is Paris Lyons and Meddeterranian. J57981. Paris Lyons in Meddeterranian J57981 was built by Chantiers de la Beurie in Lyons, France, around the 1800s, and is a four-wheel boxcar, and is also known as the Mercy Train Gratitude boxcar, and is one of 49 boxcars shipped from France to USA, and also this boxcar is one of 49 given to USA from France as a gift of thank you to the goodwill of the American public in Wing World War II. Americans donated goods and materials to fill 250 railroad cars, which were then delivered to war. There may be a lot of Mercy boxcars still out, scattered in the USA, and wherever they're located in states that may still be around. Alabama, Arizona, which is right here, Arkansas, California, Colorado, that one is currently missing, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, that one is currently missing, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming, and those are the 45 that are still around, and 2 of them are missing somewhere, like I've mentioned. Also, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Nebraska, and New Jersey's boxcars got destroyed by fire or have been scrapped. Also, 45 are preserved in the USA, and 4 are gone, and this one is right here at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona. What you see behind me, Southern Pacific 4220. Southern Pacific 4220 was built by International Car Company in Kenton, Ohio in 1963, and is a C40-5 steel bay window caboose. Also, this caboose was one of the original 1600 series caboose, and it was also used as the train crew's office when being used on freight trains, on the back of freight trains for the Southern Pacific Railroad many years ago. Also, Southern Pacific 4220 was then retired and then came to McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park and is used as a concession stand, and even a good way to be seen here as well, where it is preserved. Okay, what you see right there, that's the water tower that was used for the steam engines when they're running. The steam engines that run here at the park. Paradise and Pacific 15-inch scale railroad. Also, it's been there for a long time since the tracks were just relayed. And the station was just rearranged. Pacific 44. It is in Pacific at Stillman here in Scottsdale, Arizona. There's several riding gondola cars as well. Okay, you can see here Pacific 42. The several riding gondola cars they have here on the 15-inch scale Paradise and Pacific Railroad as well. The Santa Fe, Prescott, and Phoenix Aquila Depot was built in 1907 by the Santa Fe, Prescott, and Phoenix Railroad. It was served by the Santa Fe, Prescott, and Phoenix Railroad, which was a common carrier railroad that later became an operating subsidiary of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway in Arizona, and it even served for passenger service on the railroad and was used for passengers to buy a ticket and go on a train to somewhere or to arrive on a train from somewhere, and riding trains coming in and out of Aquila. Then later on it was retired in the 1970s, was moved from Aquila, Arizona to McCormick Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona, and today it is used as Hartley's General Store at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it is where it serves food, and it is also a gift shop and one of two gift shops in the park as well. Okay, you can see it there. Okay, you can see right here, this is the bell outside the museum, and if you're trying to remove it, the clapper will not even move since it's stationary. You can see there's a plaque right here, presented to Henry S. Sturgis, and if you ever come here, read the rest. Oh, it says Harry right here, Harry Lackawanna. It's belts from. You can see right behind these, the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, Peoria. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Peoria Depot was built in 1895 by the Santa Fe, Prescott, and Phoenix Railroad. Also, this train depot was used for passengers to buy a ticket and go on a train to somewhere or to arrive on a train from somewhere, and riding on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe trains coming in and out of Peoria. Its original location was on 83rd Avenue, just off of Grand Avenue in Peoria, Arizona. Then, later on, it was retired and in 1974 was moved from Peoria, Arizona, and was dismantled and rebuilt after it was moved to this spot and was a model train store, as it was Jerry's Trains and Tools Model Railroad Store. Then it was renamed and was Roy's Train World Model Train Shop and was a model train store till summer of 2009, and Roy's Train World was relocated to a new location, and when the museum's collection was expanding, it soon became part of the museum and in the park and has some of the collection housed inside the depot as it is today. What you see right behind this Paradise Electric Railway 10. Paradise Electric Railway 10 was built as a 15-inch scale trolley, and this is a replica of a streetcar that ran in Chicago in the mid-1800s. Also, it was in the museum long time ago and even used as an ornament to be moved around for viewing, and I believe it is standing right here as its final resting spot in the model railroad building at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park. Also, it used to be seen in the museum for display. Also, even kids play inside it, and possibly grown-ups, even if there's room. Okay, so here's the live steamers area. We're gonna look at it. So also, they're usually running on weekends, and when the holiday lights are on, they have them out. So let's go for a ride on it. Alright, so here we go on the live steamers tracks. See, this looks like miniature. This is like a replica of a town, maybe in Arizona. It looks like an Arizona town. That looks like a steam engine's boiler with a dismantled steam engine. I'll just let you all not hear my voice for the station, or maybe I could. Just went over a bridge, so as you can see that tunnel over there, we're gonna go around. Once we've made our way around, we're gonna then go down to that track and through that tunnel. But first, we're going over the tunnel. There's the other side of the tunnel. There's the 15-inch scale tracks as well. See in the distance the carousel. Kids even like to chase, even on the 15-inch scale track. Yeah, there's the main depot we're about to pass. You can tell that we went from this track to this track because, like I said, we go over the tunnel and then go around and then through the tunnel. And then back to the station. That looks like a shed where they store the trains as well. Which is, but they store them up there. There's a Trestle Bridge, and also it's like the star of the park. There's a 15-inch scale train. The bridge that is here. I hear the train coming, so I think I will get behind the camera. You can see it go by. It's a steam engine running, and I filmed this on a weekend, which is on a Saturday. Here goes 11 going by. There's the 8 gondolas, Colorado and Southern cattle car, stock car I should say, and caboose number 25. And there goes. What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 188-119. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 188-119 was built somewhere in the 1900s and is a boxcar. This car was used on freight trains carrying boxes and other kinds of loads whenever being used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad many years ago. Then sometime in the late 1990s, Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 188-119 was retired and was put in this spot at McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona, and is even used for storage purposes. And also, it is here in this spot and near the back entrance of the train shed. Okay, you can see right here. And this is the train mostly enters, but during while riding the train, while the Christmas lights are on here, which is in the area around here, the train comes out through this end, this portal, the tunnel. And also when you ride the train through the tunnel, it's really dark, like a mystic tunnel. Okay, you can see this is the other portal of the tunnel. And like I said, during the Christmas lights, the train usually, while the lights are on, the train usually direction, the doors goes on inside the tunnel, and then out this end. And also, as you will see inside the tunnel, the lights up. There are lights inside as well. Okay, I'm going to show you all the exhibits around the museum area. Get behind the camera and show you around. So here we go. Okay, so here we are walking through. That looks like a survey used on the Transcontinental Railroad. Here's a picture of a Rio Grande articulated locomotive, Denver and Rio Grande, I should say. If you would like to pause and read all this, go right ahead. I'm going slower for you. Alright. Here's a conductor's brakeman, 2 brakemen's hat from, looks like Chesapeake and Ohio, Union Pacific. Yeah, I wonder what those are. Leave a comment. Oh, this is a street box. This is a streetcar fare box. Here's some lanterns. Here's some old track tools, and look at all those on the wall up there. The museum may have changed to look like this probably in 2017 is my guess. It's back in 2016. It was a lot different than this. Here's a telephone you could crank. And this used to be a train store till summer 2009. And look at all these. It's like a Skyview car, and a dome car, and a Vista Dome, and the Great Northern, if I remember correctly. I wonder what the name of that dome car is called. Yeah, here's some more logos on the ceiling. Here's a headlight from locomotive 2754. I think that was a Southern Pacific engine. Here's when the steam locomotive came to the park and when it was still in active service. That diesel locomotive is at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler. This used to be a theater area, but now here's what it looks like today. And if you'd like to read all this, feel free to pause. I hope I got a lot of it for you to see. Alright, anyways, let's go outside. This is the Gabe Brooks Museum, some switch stands, a minecart. And let's go into the baggage car. Gonna go this way. That's the presidential car. The museum used to cost a ticket, and it used to just be housed in this car till 2009, and it expanded and moved inside that depot. And it used to cost a ticket till about a year ago or so. And here's how much has changed in this car. Here's a conductor and some baggage. Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha, that says. Now let's look at these exhibits. Yep, a lot has changed since the first video you all saw here. I wonder what this is. Time clock. Comment down below what kind of clock this would... Oh, never mind, I see it. Focus. Wonder what... This is quite an unusual clock. So anyways, let's press on. Look at all these. Wow. There's a bell. Yep, it might have been the bell outside. It might have been the bell that was outside the entryway of the museum, but it got moved in here soon. There's some old brochures, as you can see in this case. I don't know if you could see them all. Just move zigzag, and I'm moving as slowly as I can. Wow, look at all these. Pretty amazing, huh? Yeah. Here's the presidential car, so everybody, I'm going to stop here. Okay, here are some crossing lights next to the steam locomotive that has been in this spot ever since it probably got put here, as it looks like a railroad crossing right here. And yeah, I think these crossing lights may have been used by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad years ago, but here they are standing here today at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park next to the number 6 steam locomotive. What you see right behind me is the Paradise and Pacific Stillman. The Paradise and Pacific Stillman was built by Hawker Siddeley in Thunder Bay, Ontario in 1968 and is a tempo lounge car. It was originally built for the Canadian National Railroad and is believed to have originally been numbered 344, which would later have the reporting mark PPCX 800,435. Then the Canadian National Railroad passenger trains were handed over to Via Rail, which is Canada's national intercity passenger train that is similar to Amtrak. This car, along with the other cars in the passenger fleet, was likely transferred to Via Rail as well. The car was then used on the Denver and Rio Grande ski train and had the reporting mark and number and was repainted to resemble the Denver and Rio Grande scheme to match the other cars on the train as well. It was used to take skiers up to Winter Park, Colorado to go skiing. In 2002, it was donated to McCormick Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona by Charles and Adrian Crockett, where it is seen today. It was soon repainted to this color and was then moved right here in this spot where it is seen today. Also, it was removed from its trucks. It was also lettered Paradise and Pacific and added with the nameplate saying Stillman. It is also used for birthday party rental inside as well. What you see right behind me is the Paradise and Pacific Scottsdale. The Paradise and Pacific Scottsdale was built by Hawker Siddeley in Thunder Bay, Ontario in 1968 and is a tempo lounge car. It was originally built for the Canadian National Railroad and is believed to have originally been numbered 340, which would later have the reporting mark PPCX 800,430. Then the Canadian National Railroad passenger trains were handed over to Via Rail, which is Canada's national intercity passenger train that is similar to Amtrak. This car, along with the other cars in the passenger fleet, was likely transferred to Via Rail as well. The car was then used on the Denver ski train and had the reporting mark and number and was repainted to resemble the Denver and Rio Grande scheme to match the other cars on the train as well. It was used to take skiers up to Winter Park, Colorado to go skiing. In 2002, it was donated to McCormick Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona by Charles and Adrian Crockett, where it is seen today. It was soon repainted to this color and was then moved right here in this spot where it is seen today. Also, it was removed from its trucks. It was also lettered Paradise and Pacific and added with the nameplate saying Scottsdale. It is also used for birthday party rental inside as well. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific 12. Paradise and Pacific 12 was built by the Texas and Pacific Railroad shops in Big Springs, Texas in 1943 and is a 262 Prairie type steam locomotive. It was originally built as a 462 Pacific type steam locomotive. When Guy Stillman built a railroad at his ranch, it was likely built for his railroad he had in his own backyard just south of Scottsdale Road. In 1967, he contracted Bill Daney of Pueblo, Colorado, and Bill rebuilt it to the wheel arrangement it has today as well. In 1975, it was donated to McCormick Stillman Railroad Park in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was used to tear the grand opening banner when the railroad park opened to the public. Then it operated under steam one final time. In the 1990s or 2000s, it was dismantled and sat in the back of the 15-inch gauge roundhouse for years. Then reassembling was in process in 2017 or 2018. Then in late summer of 2019, it was moved to this spot and stands proudly on display in the park today as well. Also, it is the oldest 15-inch gauge locomotive found at the park as well. What you see right behind me is Paradise and Pacific 208. Paradise and Pacific 208 was built by Chuck Schlosser in 1960 and is a 15-inch gauge model of a GP7 type diesel locomotive built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois. It was originally used in Beaver Valley just near Payson, Arizona. In 1980, it was acquired by the Paradise and Pacific Railroad and moved to McCormick Stillman Railroad Park and was rebuilt by the Parks Railroad. Then about the late 1990s, it stopped operating. It was soon getting some traction motor repair performed on it. In 2018, it was finally back in operation once again, and sometimes it operates on the tracks as well. Today, it is seen here at McCormick Stillman Railroad Park and sometimes operates over the 15-inch gauge track and it is the green diesel on the railroad as well. Okay, you can see right here is a minecart that they have on display next to the depot in the museum section, and there are so many, and I'll show you all around all the minecarts that they have on display here. And here's one of them just in the museum section. I think this one was once used in the mines in the state of Arizona one time, but I wonder which mine this one could have been used by. If you leave a comment down below for each one that I show and let me know, even if you know. So let's go to the next one. Here's another minecart right here. I don't know if this one would have been in Arizona or in a different state used by a different mining company, but yeah, like I said, please leave your comment down below and let me know. I'd be glad to know where this one would have been. But yeah, here it is today, and I think this was lettered for Paradise and Pacific. I don't know if it's, yeah, maybe it looks old because of that cracked wheel that corroded a little. This part right here cracked a little. Okay, right there is a Plexus minecart. I think it had something to do with Plexus, if that's correct. And there's another one, if you can see clearly from behind the fence. And these two can be found next to the tunnel at McCormick-Stillman on the 15-inch gauge railroad. Okay, you could see right there is a minecart built for 15-inch gauge tracks. And I think the other two I just showed you might have been used for 15-inch gauge tracks. That car right there is actually a ballast car. I think the McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park uses it for laying ballast on the 15-inch gauge railroad here at McCormick-Stillman. And yeah, here are all the minecarts you all saw. Well, I hope you all enjoyed learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also, I hope to see you all again in the next segment, and if you didn't subscribe to my channel yet, the subscribe button is just down below the video screen. And if you did not give my Facebook page a like yet, here's where you can find it, as well as the Instagram page. Be sure to like and follow both. Like the Facebook page and follow the Instagram page. And don't forget, link to the Facebook page, the Instagram page, and merch is available on teesprings.com, and link to the Facebook page, the merch store, and Instagram page is just in the description box below. And remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show, signing out until next time. All aboard!